Please come to order and welcome to our afternoon budget work session. And we'll be discussing the subject as the fiscal year 2023 CIP and operating, and also the Board of Education. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Jeanette Cudmore, our Chief Financial Officer, for a presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have Jody Kwasny here, my Deputy Director.
Nope, she's going to be talking too.
Who will be helping me out a lot. Commissioners, going into this, we are halfway through the budget season. I think our budget calendar is 2 pages. We're on page 2. So we go into our March Madness, which I like to call it, and, meet with you for the next, every Tuesday in the month of March, and try to get to that recommended budget. So
well, if we make all our decisions then we're 3/4 of the way through the budget process right now.
Right. So if we can get through March, we're in good shape, and then we do the public hearing and then come back for any changes. But this is really the beginning of where we actually start making the decisions on what is going to be in the FY 2023 budget. So I might as well put this out there now. We have really 4 decisions that would be nice today. I mean, while we start, just you can think about it as we go through the package. The first one is approve the FY 2023 CIP to 2028 to take to the Planning Commission on March 14th. Okay, that's going to be something we ask you with. Approve the location of the county's public hearing. Is it going to be here in your meeting room, which we've done before, like the last 2 years, and pre-COVID, we held them at the high school. So that's something to think about. I'll go into further detail later. Provide direction on the Board of Education's FY 2023 request. And then also, one I didn't have, or I just thought about earlier, was do you want to continue? We have the constant yield add in here and the rate, and to continue with the county's current tax rate of 0.8478. So let's go through, and I just wanted to kind of put that up front to let you know as we go through, these will be the items that, it would be nice at the end of the day if we have any direction on any of this. Okay? All right, we have our agenda. First, we're going to start with, we're finishing up CIP today. We've talked about CIP since November, and you pretty much went through the entire CIP last week. Well, not last week. It seems like the weeks kind of go together, but on February 15th. And we are bringing back the one project, and we're going to start with that right now with Jody, and that's on page 1.
Thank you, Jeanette. So as Jeanette mentioned, we only have one CIP project that we're bringing back from our last discussion, and that is the community center, where we changed the title to the YMCA at Great Mills for that location and updated the narratives to the impact of the items that have happened. And we're requesting direction today to move forward with this last change from our last meeting to put the package together to go to the Planning Commission for the meeting scheduled for March 14th. And if we don't have any changes, we'll just move forward with the Planning Commission.
Only thing I'd like to tighten up on this funding schedule. The other source is $5 million. That was when we were talking about getting the money from the community, these types of things. Now, we heard today that this project could go as high as $21 million. So what I'd like to recommend is we take the other sources, move it to PAYGO, because we still got about, $9 million in PAYGO that's flexible. So we can give these people because we talked about 16.9 million commit to it.
Right.
Well, PAYGO would go as much as $11 million if we really wanted to, right?
Right, because we had the $25 million that we started off with, which was continuing the 15% floor for the unassigned to revenue ratio from the FY 2021 audit. And so 13 million's already been used for PAYGO.
Right.
Of the 25, so that does leave about $11.9 million.
Almost 12. I guess my point gets to be when we have other sources and it's unspecified what those are, it kind of leaves it open that money may not be available because we don't know where the source is.
Right.
Now, they talked about they're going to do this, bring this person, move into the county and do a fundraising effort, and he apparently has been able to do very well over in Kent County with that. We met with him, excuse me. And my point is that he's able to attract more than what he thinks or what we think he can get. Obviously, that number, our part goes down, the more he can get, whether it be contractors or anybody else. But I'd like to get the other sources specified.
Well, and along those same lines, can we add $1 million in for federal funds, assuming that Senator Cardin can appropriate some?
I'm with you. Now, they've reached out and want to meet too. But I guess my thought would be is I don't want to do that until we get it.
Well, we've got 200 in from state.
State funds, that's
Yeah,
state,
but
the 200.
I don't know. I'm hoping to talk to the governor on Friday about us getting started here and getting his help, because he's going to be there for the ribbon cutting. I'll be over there.
Right. Well, the project's in FY 2025. You know, we can wait, or we can,
Well, here's what I'm trying to understand about that, too. We're talking about trying to put a shovel in the ground next year in '23. Is that true?
depending on the timeline they provided this morning, it was probably, because we had, currently we have A&E in there, engineering and survey, which is coming from FY '20 money, and then FY 2023, which is about 1.1, and I think they indicated that would be enough to handle that part of it.
But I guess we would
And-
start the project in '24 money, FY '25, right?
Normally, we take 2 years after the A&E.
Or
and then-
FY '24, maybe.
Right, so
It's
FY
listed for
2025 is
25.
probably the right timing, I would think.
Yeah, I have no intention of pushing it left to the 24, based on the timelines.
I would just leave it as is right now, but we can change it.
We can identify the other sources.
I mean, other sources is gonna have to happen when they get past the A&E phase, because I think when you look at the other sources, what's not included in here, is the fundraising portion that's gonna have to get up to the 20 million,
Right.
that for that project. So I don't even know that, based on the fundraising portion, we shouldn't carry the rest of that money in this project. That's gonna have to be met by the YMCA. The 16 million is the allocation. The other sources could be a combination of, the federal, you do have federal funds, but it could be grant funding, it could be CIP, but I think leaving it as other sources is a wise move, because it'll allow, as the project gets moving that way, to identify those sources.
At that time.
Right.
When they become available, whatever we apply for and whatever.
Correct.
then they
Yeah,
can be shared.
whatever becomes available, whether
All right,
it's
so
fund balance,
the
PAYGO.
project still moves forward.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the CIP. It's moving forward, yes.
I think they got a pretty firm idea that we're committed to it.
All right.
So,
Okay.
any more discussion on the CIP, or,
No,
Move the sheet forward.
Move it
as
forward.
is.
yeah.
and can we get a decision to move it forward to the Planning Commission?
Do you need a
Yes.
motion or a decision?
Now, you're talking about the full CIP?
The full CIP, what you saw in the 2015?
I've been thinking about this since how we made this decision on this. I think we ought to recommend a CIP project for a pool, community center, whatever we want to call it, for Charlotte Hall, and put it in 2028. Put it in 5 years out. We can fit it into our budget debt schedule. We'll be below our debt schedule, because this is all about, we've talked about equity all along. Lexington Park's going to have theirs. Leonardtown's pretty much has theirs now. And this will give equity to the northern part of the county if we put a $21 million or $20 million community center with a pool in Charlotte Hall. That's for discussion,
As a new project.
as a new project, 2028.
So the people in the north end of the county, the citizens there, have made reference to the fact that they would like to see a YMCA in the north end of the county. I think it's a great idea. However, I want to see a proof of concept with this one before we start putting things on the book. I have no problem with a placeholder, establishing the project, but allocating a full amount with all the unknowns, that to me, that's a totally different idea.
Well,
Well, this is one's been the same thing. It's been a placeholder for the last 5 or 6 years, at least the last 7 years I've been hanging around, and it keeps getting pushed out. So the idea about putting it in there will show a commitment to wanting to do something for the northern part of the county, to show equity.
But what does that do to our debt ratio?
It keeps us under that 186, right?
It did. I think I added the 21.
I asked her yesterday to look into this.
It kept
and
us at
keeps under.
1.35%.
Yeah.
And our cap is at 1.89%. So it would keep us way under
I think the only thing that I'm remembering now is we're doing the YMCA because there isn't one here, but getting one here allows them to multiply on their own.
Well, but
Right.
it also gives us a chance to see if this one works.
Right.
And by having this out there 5 years, it also shows a commitment to them that we can get more. You know, it's like if you
Well,
have more locations, it's more ability. But Delegate Morgan and I had this conversation, and he said to me, you know, his wife Kathy and him would love to have a gym up there. And we have them down there in Lexington Park, we're gonna have 2 pools. Look, it's time to put our money where our mouth is, or at least put our thoughts where our commitments. And again, I push for 3 YMCA's or 3 of these pools across the county. I mean, look, Talbot County's got 3, and they got 39,000 people.
And their government didn't build them, though. That's the thing.
But,
We're building this
Well,
one.
again, we got to get it started.
well, we are, and I think the point is that we're getting a public-private partnership in Lexington Park because the YMCA wouldn't have came here before that. We're funding it, and their business model does multiply on their own based on the revenues that are there. You know, I think that we let this model play, and you know, we continue to work with the YMCA and say, look, the next one's got to go up north, and figure it out, and then have that conversation.
But again, make it a placeholder. And we can put a number there, but we know that 5 years from now, the number's probably not going to be reasonable, like we're finding out our number here is not reasonable.
Well, and I don't disagree with that, but not $20 million. You know, if we're going to make it a placeholder, it's, you know, it's $500,000 to establish the
You would
project.
start with the A&E,
Right.
just like
that's
how we
it.
started this project. So
Yeah.
maybe you can put the A&E in there for like, you know, the $1 million or whatever.
But the
Have to
problem,
be at 8% again, I mean.
the only issue I have with that is that sends a clear message to the YMCA that the tax dollars are going to be used again. That's not what a public-private partnership is technically supposed to establish after the first one, based on their business model. I think that this could be established the same way as a consent letter to the YMCA that says, look, we're committed to supporting a YMCA in the north end of the county. We don't need to use public funds for it. If we do, you know, at that time, well, we can sit down and have that conversation. Let's get this one off the ground and model it out from there. But to commit $20 million of public funding for yet another YMCA, I just don't.
It can always be bumped out. It can always be moved out if it's not there to be had.
My concern, I'll say it for the last time, I do not believe public money should be being spent on a private enterprise. I don't believe that our Rex and Parks people should have to worry about a new competitor coming in that we are buying to bring in. I don't believe small businesses should contend with being put out of business because we are using public tax dollars to provide for a private entity that has retained earnings, that makes money, that will compete against our own cause.
Well, I
So
mean-
that's I'm
Okay,
done
well,
saying
then,
it. It's
Do
over.
we want to go with putting it in the 28, whatever amount we put in? Do we want to do that or not?
No.
That's what I ask you, Commissioner President. Gain consensus one way or the other.
I don't think so.
None right now?
I think at the end of the day, whether we put it in or not, the next board's the one that's got to decide it, so might as well just wait for the next board to.
Okay, so no pool for northern part of the county.
Not right now.
Okay.
Okay.
We want to make sure we're on record with that.
Yeah.
So we have consensus to take it forward to the Planning Commission, the CIP?
This CIP, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, in the
Yeah.
plan.
And to clear up that last statement about being on the record, it's not that. It's called utilizing taxpayer dollars with a business model that the YMCA can build it as well. So, you know, I think everybody up here fully supports a YMCA and a pool in the north end of the county.
Yes, yes.
But they don't want to schedule a project that is preemptive to even getting the first one off the ground and allowing their business model to support the furtherance of those facilities in the county.
Okay.
So I think that's the on-the-record fair statement to make related to that.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioners. We will take that forward to the Planning, our CIP right now to the Planning Commission. Jody, you want to continue on page 2?
Yes, if you could turn to page 2, we're going to look at the assessable base data. for property tax revenue. And looking at the column at the far right, we've updated the property tax revenue for the constant yield tax rate data we received from the state on February 14th. And the total property tax revenue is estimated at $123.3 million. And to provide you some background information on the constant yield tax rate, this is the result of the triennial assessment. And the most recent assessment is in Area 1, which is the northern part of the county. And we've included a copy of the county's assessment area map in the reference section on page 45. And based on this assessment, the county's residential values increased in this area compared to its assessment 3 years ago, at 14.2% for residential, 16% for commercial, and a combined increase of 14.3% with the state increase at 12%. And these numbers are on page 46.
All right, real quick. Ms. Cudmore was looking for a motion for the CIP earlier. So I make a motion to approve the capital improvement plan as presented and authorize the finance office to present it to the planning commission.
Did you need
for
a
approval.
motion?
Second.
She asked for
And
one.
it's good, yes, I did. Thank you.
You did need a motion? I'm
I
sorry.
do, it would be nice, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to present CIP. Got a second?
Second me.
Okay. All in favor?
Yay.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Connor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So back to the constant yields. The property tax assessments and the constant yield tax rate have an inverse relationship, and therefore with the increased assessment, we see a decreased constant yield tax rate of 0.8270 to keep the property tax revenue consistent. And Jeanette's going to go through this a little further when we look at the property tax credits on page 3.
Okay.
So this is the sheet on page 3 that you're used to seeing, you know, our green-colored sheet. And at the top, you can see when we get to the detailed revenues on page 5, that these are the tax credits. So we have the top tax credit. It's called our 6510 property tax credit. You can see the historical data that we've collected, and we're planning on keeping that FY 2023 estimate at $75,000. Then the senior tax credit cap, I'm lowering that down a little bit, and the estimate is at $550,000. Then we have the matching tax credit below that, and that's going to be at $300,000. And the Maryland homeowners property, and that's actually a match for the seniors who qualify of the Maryland homeowners property tax credit. So if they have the Maryland homeowners property tax credit, they can apply to receive that matching senior tax credit. And when we have the credit of $900,000, but the county is reimbursed for that credit from the state. So it's kind of a wash in our revenues.
Okay.
And then below that is our amount you can see for the homeowners homestead tax credit. And we are still at 3%. That information was sent to our local SDAT office, letting them know that we're going to continue the 3%. And what that does, and that's why when you see our assessments only go up 3.68% compared to what they were in the triennial assessment, that's related to our 3% cap. So yes, it's over the 3%, but when a home is sold, it goes automatically to what the house was sold for. When the assessment goes up, it only grows by that 3% in years past, and there's some information in the reference material, when it dropped down to like in 2009, it's an immediate drop. So when it goes up, it grows by 3%. When it goes down, it's an immediate drop. So we work our way getting up and increasing that assessment from year to year with that cap of the 3%. So on that bottom column, you can see based on the information in the constant yield letter, we are having the 3%. Our amount of the estimated assessment for the homestead is the 57.1. And that rate in FY22 was a 0.829 was our constant yield rate. And then for FY 2023, our constant yield rate is 0.827, and the amount of the increased assessment for the homestead tax credit had gone up. And that's, again, like Jody had said, as the assessments go up, the amount of your constant yield and the amount of the homestead amount goes down. Or, yeah, as the assessments go up, your constant yield rate goes down. Let's go back and look at page 42 while we're here, if you don't mind. We've got a lot of good stuff back here in the reference material. And this is the constant yield on page 42. This is what we actually received, like I say every year. That's my Valentine's Day gift. I don't know why they do it every year on February 14th, but they do, and I get excited to see it. And you can see the information is, there's the .8270, and it's, our current rate is the 8.8478, and that's a .0208 difference. So what this calculation does is that to keep our revenues the same as prior years, as the assessments go up, that constant yield rate comes down, and that gives you like a neutral revenue, okay? And then from there, we have to, on page 43, this is our ad that we send up to, and this is an ad, and I know there's some local legislation or state legislation that's trying to reduce some of the requirements for the constant yield. This is the ad, and currently this is the ad that we have to put in the paper, and word by word. And SSTAT, I send it up to Zachary up at the state, and he says, okay, it's approved. You know, he had me correct a few things. And it's got to be exactly the way they write it. But included in this ad, pre-COVID, we held our public hearings at the high school. And in the last 2 years, we've held our public hearings in this room here. And, you know, at high schools, it allows more people in person. And so more can come out from the community. Here in this room, we have better technology. We control the technology.
Well, be careful, because Smith is sitting back there, and you say that he's going to sit there and want a whole damn new PA system put into Chapacon High School.
We've put in a whole new system, we're ready for it.
Good, so I would say we have the hearing in
Chapacon?
April at Chapacon, so it is technically ready to go.
I like it.
And people now can come back and not have to be wearing masks in schools for these events.
Well, I think they were having a good time out in the parking lot last year.
Question about that. If we hold it at Chopticon, are we able to have people call in to ask questions?
And that would be no.
We are not.
Okay, then I
They
would
cannot
advocate
submit
for keeping
video
it here.
submissions, nor can they call in. Everything will have to be done in person or in writing.
Right.
Then I say keep it here.
I think that thinking about inclement weather or anything else, or people that have had to sit out in their cars, I think it's a give and take. The idea that we couldn't have video submissions, maybe, maybe not, because, you know, there's a projector there, and you could easily plug in the USB drive and play it over the PA system. I think that could be accomplished. And, you know, just spitballing here. And as far as people calling in, you know, I think that logistics they wouldn't be able to have our extensions, so I think that may be the only thing that we would be limited on, is people calling in. But, you know, I don't want to have people sitting outside waiting to get into the commissioner's meeting room and not be able to participate in the public hearing process. Yeah.
In other words, you want to have it at the high school?
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
High school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
high school.
But now, are we off of the constant yield?
No, we're still talking about the constant.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do number 2, which says we're going to have April 26th hearing at Chapacon.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Chapacon High School, yeah.
All right. You need a
Chapacon.
motion on that, or
Can I?
make a motion for an April 26th public hearing on the FY23 budget at Chapacon High School?
Second.
All right, first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it.
And also, while we're on the constant yield, can I get a motion on keeping?
Okay, just let me
During
make
the-
sure I understand this first sentence.
Yes, sir.
The Commissioners of St. Mary's County proposes to raise, or to increase real property taxes.
Because
Taxes increase, the rate stays
the
the same.
assessments are going up.
Well, it means we're proposing to increase real property taxes.
Right. If you keep your rate at .8478.
Can we take another advertisement out and put it above it that says this language is required by the state and that we're not.
We have not raised the
I
constant
believe-
yield tax in 10 years.
This is why it's in,
It has been a big Mako subject.
it has
Oh,
been.
yeah.
Legislation is currently going through that I believe has a strong chance of passing both houses that gets rid of this nebulous language in there
Yeah.
that tends to confuse everyone every year.
Exactly.
So this is not just a St. Mary's County issue. This is a statewide issue that the legislature is acting on because every jurisdiction is upset about the way you were required to post this wording.
Right. And it's kind of interesting now that we've gone to the Southern Maryland News and they have all 3 counties in one paper.
Yeah.
And it's like last year, I could say, oh, there's Charles County's ad, here's our ad, there's Calvert's. I mean,
And
we're
they're all
all
the
doing
same.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same ad.
Yeah. All right, well, I move to adopt the constant yield and authorize the Department of Finance to advertise
At .8478.
at .8478.
If not the constant.
The property tax rate the same.
Right.
Right,
Remains the same.
yes, remains the same.
Did I get a first on that? Did I get a second?
Second at
Second.
.8478.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
All righty, let's go on. Page 4. All right, now we're getting into our revenues, and Jody will go into the expenses. But let's just kind of go through our revenues right now. Okay, so here's the total property taxes, and we updated it based on the information from the state on the constant yield letter, and you can see that the current revenue is $123.3 million. It's an increase of $4.3 million over and above the approved FY22. Okay? Income taxes. This is currently at $125.8 million, and this is based on your approval on the February 15th to do a 3% rate at a 5% growth. So it's the 121.5 plus the 4.3 adjustment for the SALT, bringing it up to 125.8 million. That's an increase of $5 million. Okay? Other local taxes, this has gone up. That's really updating it based on the trend taxes, and we've got the detail on a few more pages when I get to them. Highway user, we get that letter from the state twice a year from MDOT, and they let us know how much, based on the registered vehicles in the county, how much our highway user amount is, and you can see that it's coming up slowly. We're finally up to 1.8 million, and I looked at some information this week, and it's like, a long way we've come since FY 2009, when we received over $6 million. Okay, and then I think that's also something else in the legislation where they're trying to get that increased.
Yes, they are. We're testifying next week on the 10th and 9th.
Right. I mean, when it dropped from the 6.9, it went down to like 300,000.
Yep.
So it has slowly come back.
From 300,000.
But we would like to get our revenue back in the county.
Yeah.
Total licenses and permits. Now, from licenses and permits down to charges, fines, and state grants, those are all estimates that come from the departments. So licenses and permits, that amount is $667,000, an increase of $5,000. Charges for services is actually a reduction of $103,000. Fines and forfeitures is staying about the same. The grants, you can see in FY 2021, the actual, that $23.8 million is primarily, that's when we got all the CARES money, and we got CARES money also from the health department.
COVID
And we
stuff.
also received a lot of other money regarding all this different CARES money. And then the approved for 22 is a 10.4, and right now, the departments have submitted grants for about 13.6. Below that is our American Rescue Grant. Remember, we had 11.1 in here for FY22. We're meeting with you every other month, pretty much going over the allocations, and you've been given direction so far on all of the $11 million, except for I think there's like $499,000 unallocated for FY22. And then FY 2023 is the second year of the grant, which we have, I think we've got about $6 million of unallocated.
How do we have different amounts for the two, FY '22 and '23?
Well,
Just curious.
The way
no,
it
no,
was
no, no.
distributed.
It's, what happened is our original estimate that we had in the FY '22, the information came down and it showed that we were going to get 11.1. When the check finally showed up, or the wire came in June, I think it was June 14th, it was the new amount of the 1123. So they actually reduced us. So now, of course, we're going to put the same 11023 in FY 2023. Okay, yeah, I know, I was like, really? And of course, in the other revenues, you can see that's down about 220, what we did last year, and I think a couple of years is that we had our health insurance increase. We had the county's portion of the benefit was included in here, and we were using our health insurance refunds from Care First. That hasn't been done yet, so that's kind of why that's been reduced. Right now, I think the early estimates from HR and Care First is that our insurance benefit is going up about 2.5%. So we're still in great shape. Our experience is great. And then at the bottom, the total other financing sources, that $13 million is the current amount that's being used out of your $25 million of your fund balance from FY 2021. So that brings your total FY 2023 revenue up to about $304 million. It's an increase of 15.3 over FY 2022 approved. I will go back and look at the revenues for the licenses from the departments and kind of review them and kind of see if, can any of them change or be updated. I know there's one I need to look at that needs to probably be updated.
Go ahead, I'm finished. Finish your sentence, I'm sorry.
That's pretty much it.
Well, I have a problem with how we state the revenue, because next year, when we come in, the American Rescue money won't be there.
It'll be zero, right?
So the question you're looking at here is you have an artificially inflated number because of this grant of $304 million. And next year you would come in technically and be at $193 million plus or minus whatever the tax and property revenue is. So I think that $11 million distorts how much money per se we have, since that rescue money can only be used for certain things. It
Right.
just can't be used for operating expenses and willy-nilly. So I'm going to go back and say again, I complained last year. I'm complaining again this year, and you would have to listen to me next year.
Well, I mean,
Well, that's why we
Look at
kind
the
of put
bright
it on
side.
we put it on its own separate line last year for that reason, because of you. And
We put it
So
back
the-
this year.
and there it is, right. So it will go away, but it does have a same expense. So when the revenue goes away, that expense goes away. So it's,
But that's money usually used for non-recurring.
and exactly.
We have to. Yeah.
But I mean, the statement that the ARPA funds can't be used for anything is actually based on the current guidance and the final ruling from the Treasury for the CLRF funding is not entirely accurate.
Right.
They have opened it up to pretty much everything. There's only very minor few exclusions within that ARPA funding to include that they've authorized it for certain recurring costs
Right.
that may be associated. So they've even broadened the spectrum on fighting gun violence and gun reduction, various other things. So if you dive into that document, which I know you have, you can see that.
They have provided broader.
Yeah, it's very broad, actually, and if we were able to use the standard deduction, you could use it for anything. I mean, literally anything. It doesn't matter. You just
Right.
got to justify.
But we're only going to only receive that money in '22 and '23. And then
Right.
once that money is gone, anything that you identified that might have been recurring stops.
We can't-
Well, of
we
course.
can't-
Then
Yeah,
you have to
that's-
find other resources
Should
then
not
to
be used
cover
for
it if you
recurring.
wanted it to be
Yeah,
recurring.
it'd be illogical to use it for recurring costs based on the fact that it's going to dry up. But I mean, it's. I do agree, though, that incorporating it does find a false sense of the funding because it is going to dry up.
Yeah.
Is there any other way to categorize
Well, I mean, we
it?
have the same offsetting expense, so it's really just, it comes in and it goes out. It's just, so when that expense goes away and when this funding goes away, even though we have until FY 2024 to spend it, it'll be grant funds.
Obligate, right? Spend by 26.
Obligated and then
Yeah.
spend by 26. There's just no more budgeting for it. That budget ties up, but you have a longer amount of time to spend it.
Right, so what are you including it in the budget for the purposes that it could go out to 26, however, it's for non-recurring costs?
No, it's only in the budget for '22 and '23, and then we'll keep it in a project. and monitor the expenses based on your approval for 22 and 23, which we're doing now for 22.
Right, so looking at it
Not
here.
using it for salaries or anything. I mean, Lord.
There are some, a couple of positions.
Grant positions.
Right, they're grant positions, but when that grant goes away in '23, we will have to, I mean, a perfect example is the nurse in the sheriff's office. Right now, we're funding the nurse in the sheriff's office with this money in '22 and probably also for '23. In the 2024 budget, you'll have to continue that nurse, you'll need to find another revenue source, other county revenues, or discontinue the nurse.
Oh, but do we? Because the funding is supposed to be obligated and/or spent up to 26. So if it was managed differently, you'd be able to push it out till 26, and you wouldn't have to do that.
I guess if there were any monies that were unspent.
Correct.
You
That-
could
that's my point.
reallocate it until,
Right,
all
right.
you're getting is the 22 million.
Right, no,
Period.
exactly. I think, I don't want to have the conversation in a finite detail where all of a sudden we're talking that in '23, we'd have to fund this position. But if they're out of operating revenue, when in all actuality, we would be able to, if there was other funding available within the ARPA, that we'd be able to go ahead and push it out to 26.
You could.
Yeah,
You just don't get any more money past the 22 million.
great, yeah.
Right, but let's say right now we have like 499,000 unallocated from the FY '22.
I think they called it a deluge, actually, in their award letter. The deluge is over and after the second award.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, but we show it in here because we really wanted to separate it from our regular grants so that our regular grants weren't overinflated and have it in here just so we know that, yes, it is going away. There's no more grant monies. Well, of course, things could change. But right now, to me, it's helpful to see it because I have the same offsetting expense in 2023.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as spoken earlier, we have the FY 2021 audit. We had identified that we could do $25 million for use of unassigned fund balance. And currently, with your PAYGO and the CIP that's going to the Planning Commission, you've used $13 million, and that leaves about 11.9 that can be used for non-recurring and one-time costs. All righty, so going forward, now we have all the detail revenues are on page 5. And the tax credits that I went over that were on the earlier page, they're all up under the total property taxes, okay? And you can see all the breakdown. We've got, the real property, full year and half year, the personal property for sole, we got the utilities and the ordinary corporation, and then all of your tax credits, and even your penalties and interest that we receive over the treasurer's office, and your pilot agreements are all included in here, bringing your total revenue for property taxes up to $123.3 million.
That's just the revenues of property taxes, right? You're not calculating anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right.
Those are all related to property taxes. So but they're all individually, they all have their own little account.
Right.
And we keep track of it and look at it and monitor it. And then all your other accounts are here, your income taxes, which we've already talked about. Your other local taxes are here, your admissions and amusement. We've kept that at $100,000. You can see in 2021, we only received $30,000. That number is now starting to grow, so that's a good sign for the economy, is that we're finally, I think, up to I think I saw 59,000 the other day. We're only halfway through, and they're always behind in their payments, but at least it's not 30. So that's, gives a little bit of hope that things are starting to open up. The franchise, this is the cable franchise fee. That one's still about $1 million. Energy taxes at $1 million. Public accommodations tax, we've got that $875. It's still starting to grow. Recordation taxes, we're estimating at about 7.2. That amount is coming in, so I did increase that estimate by another $500,000. We can watch that and see, as we go
Don't
forward.
expect that to be more along the 9 million that you,
Well, we're looking at, I'm going to keep monitoring it and looking at it, and if, by the time we get to, I'll look at it a little bit further and come back if I think we can increase that estimate if the payments are
because I
still
don't
coming in.
think we've seen any drop in real estate.
I don't think it's going to drop. I think they're still going up, but we did increase the estimate by 500. Like I said about the other revenues that the departments do, I'm going to go back and relook at those and see if any of those can be adjusted up. Okay? and then we'll have a better estimate as we go forward. And then trailer park tax, that one's actually increasing too. So highway users, there's that amount. You can see the trend. The licenses and permits, this is, like I said, those are the revenues that pretty much come from the departments. There's a couple of them in here that I looked at, and it's like, wow, you know, they didn't even increase the estimate. But I think we can go higher. So I'll review those. But I kind of like, at this stage, this is really coming from them, and then when we start, we actually have different budget levels. And this is the request, actually the request level. Once you start providing direction to us, then we'll actually have a recommended budget level, and then that'll start showing all of your direction or any changes in revenue estimates that I feel that we should update, okay? So then we got charges and services on page 6, and the rest of the revenues are on page 7, and you can see state, federal grants, that has the American Rescue actually combined in that number, in that $24.6 million. And then when we get to the recommended budget book, we'll have those grants actually all in detail. Any questions on revenues?
Just one thing, I watch your monthly reports that Sherry gives to us, and I just brought it up. For the revenues for 6 months for recordation tax was 5.5 million. I'm sorry, yeah, 5.5 million.
You're right.
And you've got 6 more months to go, and you're figuring 7.2. I still think that number, 7.2, is too low. I mean, you could probably
I
pick up
agree.
another 2 million there easily, because if we're
Okay.
5.5 through 6 months,
Yep.
we still got 6 months to go.
Yep, and I kind of also look at it, and that's a point in time now, in that where we are now, and I kind of look at it for a trend. I actually look maybe 2 years worth of trends or 3 years just to kind of see where we are, so that, you know, yes, we are receiving the money now, but is it something that is sustainable?
Well, do we see the real estate market cooling off? That's the key.
I hope it stays up.
Well,
Yeah,
Anyway.
let me look at
I
it.
think that's too low.
Okay.
Your number 7.2, I think, is too low.
I got you. I'll look at it. Thank you.
I would tend to agree.
Okay, all right. I'll review those, and when we come back and we look at revenues again.
Just remember, we get those reports every month.
I know you do. We're the ones that give you the,
Does it come from your office, really?
it comes from our office.
I'm sure, I'm wondering if you get them every month. You have to review them and send them out, right?
I do get
I know.
You just pass them on, right? You don't look at it. Just pass it.
No, I agree. I agree.
You know where I'm coming from.
I know.
No, yeah. Commissioner Hewitt had mentioned the OPEB and not, the possibility of not putting that full payment into the OPEB. Have you removed that as an expenditure and placed it into the operating to keep the funding levels where, or am I getting too far ahead?
Well, you're actually looking at page 8.
Okay,
And
that's
Jody's
where
gonna
I'm
go
at right
over
now,
this.
so, okay.
Right, you are. And right now, looking at page 8, we still have the estimate that we feel that we're going to need in the 2023 budget, but we are waiting. I think we're meeting with our OPEB again in April, and when we had our last meeting, they really told us, we did receive some direction that said, you're putting money into this OPEB trust to use for this purpose, and now that you're overfunded, you should use it.
Right.
So that is something, it's not that we're reducing anybody's benefits, it's because the money in the trust is for us to use.
But I mean, we wouldn't have to contribute. If we're over, then we wouldn't have to contribute. Like, we would be able to.
We would be using for our current retirees
We
the
haven't
amount in the trust.
But look, we haven't contributed for the last 7 years
Right.
anyway.
Right.
The good news is we caught the market such,
Yeah.
we were able to double our portfolio. That's great news. The other point, though, is we've been paying those retirement funds out of operating. We don't need to do that anymore.
I think that's where,
Look, I beat that horse to death with that homestead tax. We could lower it because we're going to get this $3.9 to $4 million coming to us. We talked about taking the 3.0 to 3.1, which is costing us $1.9 million, which still gives us over
Right.
$2 million in monies there that we could do something else with.
Right.
So again, this is as commissioners, we should be proud of ourselves for how that account has turned out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's amazing. We're like one of the few counties.
Yes.
And we have overfunded, not that it's overfunded, we have now, instead of a liability in our 2021 audit, we have an asset.
We have an asset, yeah.
Well, and that's my point, as Commissioner Hewitt had made, the retirement being paid out of operating. I'm guessing we're at the point now, and that's where I was going
And
with
that could
it.
be a reduction of $4 million.
Right, and that's my point. We don't
Of
need
your
to allocate that
expense.
$4 million because we've already at where we need to be, and we can balance it out, and we have the $4 million back into
We
the
got a
operating.
heck of a slough, you know.
Yes.
We got a lot of leeway here.
And maybe that's a policy that we could develop, and we can look at it, and we can get help from Bolton that says, you know, depending on where you are, look back at the prior year audit. You know, if you're still over and you still have an asset, then you can use the trust. If it starts to dip or looking at it, go ahead.
Look, this Bolton thing, these guys, I love these guys, but we clash, we have differences of opinion on how. The point is, new people coming on, as we hire new people, because we're going to be talking about hiring new people today, we got to figure that's costing us probably about $500,000 a year. To maybe, depending on how many people we get, could go as high as $1 million in additional OPEB cost future down the line. But the amount that we have overfunded now, this 17, 18 million, that is money that's making us money
Right.
that offsets that additional 500,000 or million. I mean, we've got ourselves in a good spot.
Right.
We've got ourselves in a lot of financial flexibility.
Yeah.
And I've always said that from a guy who was in business, it's easy to run things when you got money. It's tough to run things when things are tight.
Yeah.
These are good times for us.
Right. And so right now, that $4 million, you can see it's in the 2023 baseline request column. It's down there under employees, retiree health costs, is included in the expense.
So
So that is direction if you want to give us that we can remove.
I don't see why we would keep it in there as an expense. If we have, should remove it.
Well, I mean, if we're going to be saying things like we got to keep the constant, or the homestead at 3% or the constant yield at the same rate because we don't want to race to the bottom and be the number one, you know, people for taxes and benefits to our communities, well, then keep it there and use it as a cushion. By taking it out, that raises at 13 to 17. Now, is that a bad thing? I don't think so. But my thought process would be, how much are we going to spend more? Or are we going to let people pay less in? Are we going to lower taxes? Are we going to reduce the tax burden on our citizens? Or are we just going to take it in and spend more? It's
Well,
like
I
the
think
state of Maryland. When they get it, they're going to spend it. They're not about to give it back.
Well, no, but on the other side, looking at the requests that are coming in, I think some of these requests are actually reasonable, and the underestimation of growth for a few years has put us in a unique position. By allocating that $4 million, the long-term impacts based on the investment, what do you perceive as the long-term impacts from reducing the $4 million as the health benefits, utilizing the fact that it can be paid at OPEB?
I don't think we would have a current impact at all. I think it's something that you monitor every year when you get your audit and you have an updated amount of your obligation. Whether right now we have an asset, like I said, in the 2021 audit, where we have now exceeded the amount of the liability that the county had to fund. And I think if you go forward and look at your audit each year, when you're working on your next budget, look at it. If you have still funded the amount and you still have an asset, I don't think it hurts to use for the next budget year, not have to fund it as an expense.
I just need to interject. What we need to consider is doing a policy similar to our fund balance policy.
Right.
Where we have the liability that's required of us, we maintain.
Right.
And if we get close to that, then we got to put some money in.
Right.
But it's going to be a while before we get there.
I think so. But I think having a new policy and maybe having a OPEB funding policy
It's
might
good
not be a
government.
bad idea.
Good government.
It is good government. And, so right now, I think we're okay in this FY 2023. Where earnings are in great shape. We're continuing to earn. If we get to the point where that asset becomes a liability again, then maybe that's where we say in the policy, okay, all
So, I
right,
mean,
maybe we
that's-
need to fund it and
Yeah.
slow down and reallocate.
Well, that's why I look at it this way, is the money that's sitting in the OPEB, while I was first very skeptical of it after reading the reports and getting a better understanding, I'm with it.
Right.
And the side of it is, it's not working for the people right now. The $4 million that we're going to allocate, it's not, in a sense, it's not working for the people. We can take that $4 million by using the investments and put it direct to work out, so the money isn't going to end up in a
can
fund balance
allocate
or an
it to-
investment. Right, to a service that can be
Right.
provided. I mean, we've driven down the income tax. That was absolutely evident. You know, the constant yield. I don't want to marry the two about driving the taxes down, because the demand for services in this county is exponential.
Sure.
So when we're talking about Parks and Rec, we're talking about the CIP, we're talking about a YMCA, we're talking about roadways, infrastructure, career systems, vehicles. That money can be put to use very, very well. And of course, I'm not forgetting about public safety in the schools as they sit back there.
Right.
So there's a massive opportunity to seize that and then revisit based on that policy.
On an annual basis.
Yeah, but to Commissioner Hewitt's point is, by leveraging that now, you can get a better scope, and you may be able to actually lower that assessment cap in the
Again,
next
what I
budget.
go with is what our real sources of revenue are, income and property. Those two taxes are things we can lower or raise as we want to or need to.
Right.
So once we start putting out reoccurring funding every year, that's going to have to be going out every year, because that'll be hard to cut. That'll be cutting services. But the key is, I think at this stage is, like as March 1st, 2022, is to understand people get double SMETCO bills, or significantly higher fuel cost, significantly higher food cost. Everything's costing more. So it's impacting people now. So if we're going to make a difference in people's lives, we need to be able to give them more money back. Now, I'm not against giving services. I think we should. But I don't think we're doing a bad job giving the services we're giving.
Right.
But faced with what people are feeling, and I'm talking about everybody across the board, but especially people on fixed incomes, seniors, poor people just bad jobs or menial jobs. They're the ones getting hurt bad now by all these inflationary factors.
Well, I would tend to agree. I think, you know, when you start looking at it by, you know, if we were to do it this year on the $4 million, you know, and putting it in there, what I will say is, I don't think we're doing a bad job of providing services to the citizens. I don't think we're doing an outstanding job, because there's areas that are lacking that we could be far advanced further. That's not a declaration on the quality of work and service that our employees are providing. What it means is that we could be doing more with the funding that we have, but we haven't been doing more. So there shouldn't be a struggle for a lot of things looking at this budget.
Right.
Literally, this budget, as presented, could technically just be rubber stamped to a certain extent, with minus one large request, but that needs to be spoken about. But looking at it, then we'd still have money left over based on the growth rate. So I think that there's room for improvement either way. I have no problem removing the 4, then using it in this and having a policy established by the finance team through Bolton,
Okay.
and looking at it that way.
Do we have consensus to remove the $4 million and use the trust funds in the OPEB?
As far as
Yes.
from the expense.
Expenditure line.
Yes, as far as the expenditures, yes. And then that gives you another $4 million to use towards your ECC request.
Now, if there is a way through this budget that we do everything and we are able to lower the income tax based on the timeline that we have, I absolutely would be more than happy to consider that and have that conversation again based on what Commissioner Hewitt said. Putting money back into people's pockets during this inflation is actually important. So,
Well, your income tax right now, you gave us direction for 3% at a 5% growth.
I'm not asking to adjust it at this point. I'm just proffering that, you know, that is a conversation that could possibly happen based on what Commissioner Hewitt.
Right, and you also have, and I probably get kicked myself later, you also can do constant yield.
I like constant yield. But again, I know
And
there's
if you
always
look back,
resistance to that.
and you can look back at page 42.
Well, I think, yeah, you're going to kick yourself on that one because I've had the presentations and
I
I've
know,
seen the
well, no,
effect.
I'm just saying, those are all.
I don't even want to touch it because I've seen it and I've watched it
Right.
in the budget years that we were coming close in the compounding factor.
That's $2.8 million that you would
Yes.
Still
reduce,
think
right?
We got enough this year that we've done enough, we can probably fund the things we want to fund, probably have another fund balance, but then again, see what we are next year.
Right,
Because next year, not all the same people could be sitting here.
right.
The market's not treating your OPEB real well right now either.
What's that?
Well,
Your market is not being treating the OPEB account real well right now.
No, but look, we shifted that out
It
of
dropped
those higher
600 points
risk to the
today.
lower risk. Now, we're still taking a hit. We are. But we're not taking as big a hit if we'd have been with that same strategy we were 18 months ago or a year ago.
All right. Well, I guess you had three, at least three on the, right? Were you good with the 410?
4 million or.
Oh, you're moving that out? We don't need to put that in expenditures now.
Okay, so that's, all
No,
right.
that
So
shouldn't
we
even
have
be in.
consensus to
It
remove
shouldn't
that
be in expenditures at all.
And that gives you, instead of like 12.7 million, you have now the additional 4.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay? All right, Jody.
But it doesn't mean we got to spend it.
No.
Right.
Although,
Okay.
yes, I'm sure.
It will be spent because we have to balance.
We got a lot more to go through yet. We got
Yes.
a lot of
There's tons. I'm
FTEs
trying
to find.
and that's the whole thing.
We have a long way to go.
We got a long ways to go, yeah. We got some big money to be spent here soon.
I'm looking at the long-term picture here and
Hire
seeing,
more people.
you know.
Right.
We're going to be hiring more people here soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Jody?
Okay, so I'll move forward. We're on page 8, and that's the page we've been discussing for the
Right,
last
right.
few minutes, which is our expense summary. And the way this works is if you start on the upper left-hand side and work your way down, we have the department and staff, we have the elected officials, we have the boards and state agencies, then we move to other budget costs, and if you look at line employer contributions, retiree health costs, pardon me, that's the 4 million we've been discussing, and then the bottom are your transfers, reserves, your pay-go to your CIP. And moving to the next column, we list our 2021 actual. Moving to the right, we have our 2022 approved budget. And then the next column is our 2023 baseline request. This baseline request is the 2022 approved budget minus any non-recurring items plus any cost adjustments. So that gets you down to the 291.3 million. Moving to the right, we have our ECC requests. These are requests from our departments, our elected officials, our state agencies. And right now, we have a request of 22.7 million. So this request does not include county compensation, and it also includes the combination of recurring and non-recurring expenses. And as we go through this, we would potentially be able to take any non-recurring expenses and fund it through our fund balance. But it's all included in here. If you look at the blue row across on each budget work session, we'll highlight in blue the agencies that we'll be talking about for that today. And today we're talking about the Board of Ed, which they have a little over $13 million request. If you move over to the right, we have the county administrator recommended, and those recommended items will come up as we discuss each department. Right now, the county administrator has a $1.7 million request added to the recommended budget to bring the total recommended to $116.3 million. And that $116.3 million is actually lined up with the blueprint plan for 2023 for St. Mary's County. So if
You're
you,
following the Kerwin plan.
yeah.
So we would
That was
be
the
up to.
rationale behind that.
It's the new number, where we were looking
yeah,
at
it
it in the
floats every
past
year.
years. Now they've extended it, and now they've given updated numbers.
Okay.
There's only a handful of counties that are meeting this blueprint. We just happen to be
Yeah,
one of
but the irony is there's going to be a supplemental bill number 2 coming
That's
from the
gonna
governor.
come forward. That's-
And the ridiculous part about the supplemental number 2 bill is that the only people it's going to cover is Prince George's County and Baltimore City. So because they don't have, well, just saying, they're not as fiscally good as we are or
They've been
responsible.
slacking, let's put it that way.
Hence, what they want to do is give all the money to Baltimore City and Prince George's County for their financial deficit on the education side.
And squandering.
Which is huge, gigantic.
Okay.
Well, I mean, on the Board of Ed, I would support.
Wait, is Mr. Smith going to make a presentation? Are you supposed
Yes.
to speak today or just going to look good?
I'm good with 7 mil.
No, we don't.
What?
I think we've
The
already
Board of
heard what he
Education.
wants to say. We was in the.
Well, let's move forward. Jody,
Okay.
did you have anything?
You keep up keep your presentation going.
Okay, I mean, brevity is the word
We're getting to the
today,
Board of
so-
Ed. We're getting
Okay,
there.
so page,
So, well, I have a question then. So, since the Board of Ed was brought up, the 7 million broken down, is that for the maintenance of effort and the bus drivers?
Yes, why don't we, so pretty much Jody has gone through page 8. Let's go back to the Board of Ed, since that's kind of like the topic of the day.
so that's page 34 is where they start the individual
Oh, thank you.
And if,
requests.
5.3 is a negotiated agreement.
right, if you'd like to, Mr. Smith, if you'd like to come up, please. And Tammy, you're more than welcome. Pull a chair. Want to phone a friend? Here, you can come over and just make,
Where's this breakdown? I thought I saw it.
Well, welcome back, Dr. Smith. Good to see you again.
Sure.
fine? Okay. Anyway, on page 34 is their first ECC, and you're on.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you very much, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak with you at the onset of, although halfway through, the onset of really presenting particular budgets. There is so much confusion around all of the different funding sources. There's federal, there's state, there's local, there's ESSER 1, 2, 3, there's blueprint left over, there's moving through. The challenge that we have is that we had a generous funding last year of $114.5 million, and you were all presented with a forecast for the next 10 years that you would have to increase local funding by about 1.5% to 2% every single year. Incredibly simple, straightforward. It speaks to the level of funding that we're having down here. Great. Unfortunately, the other side of that is the state funding for the blueprint. Now, the state funding for the blueprint for St. Mary's County presented all the way up through this summer that we would be receiving $133 million. $133 million, you're 116.3. We would be in fantastic shape. We'd be able to go and do everything we needed to do. There would be peace within the land, correct? Great. Unfortunately, the formulas don't work. The formulas didn't work before they started fiddling with them. They're worse now, and they absolutely disadvantage the western, the eastern, and the southern parts of the state of Maryland. People who are fiscally appropriate and conservative and thoughtful about their dollars are being punished by this new formula. So instead of $133 million, we are receiving $123 million. That $10 million, poof, is gone. As a result, we come before you, and we are not requesting $116.3 million, as you would assume is the appropriate request is going through. Instead, we have to look to make up that $10 million that disappeared, to meet all of the strictures of the blueprint as it goes through. So what we did with this budget, Ms. McCourt and I, we worked back and forth. Well, Ms. McCourt, I just was along for the ride. We really took all of the federal and state funds and we pushed it into the side of the budget that are the non-negotiable costs, the costs that are incrementally increasing, the costs that we have to cover, health insurance, utilities, fuel, all the things that are going to run the system, so that in the event that you did just give us flat funding, the school system would go on. People would not be laid off. Programs wouldn't cease. The school system would go on. Instead, what comes before you are 3 ECCs. The first is perhaps the easiest. The first ECC is for non-recurring funds. I don't know what order that, I believe it is. So it's
36.
It's $6.2 million for non-recurring funds, $2.2 million for everything related to technology, $2 million for digitizing all of our elementary textbooks relative to English language arts, and that's for multi-years worth of licensing, and then $2 million so that we might put it to our other post-employment benefits. Now, I will tell you, that is one-time money. In the event that you weren't able to fund us that one-time money, what we will do at the end of this year is the same thing that we've done for the last 2 years. We will anticipate what our fund balance will be, and we will put it to these sources. So in the event that you weren't able to find $6.2 million at the end of this year, if we are anticipating having fund balances, and we will have fund balances because we have lapsed salary savings, because we have positions that we haven't been able to fill, we will put that money to these 3 categories.
Dr. Smith, if I could, would it be possible for you to just take that posture now related to these non-recurring costs?
Certainly. So with your direction at the conclusion of this, we can go back, and that could be, we will be looking towards our own sources for non-recurring one-time fund balance expenses.
Right.
Instead, then it would just allow you to focus on 2 ECCs. Right. And the next ECC is $5.2 million, and that is to honor the negotiated agreement. And $5.2 million is $5 million for a step, which can be 3% for our non-certificated employees, and it's 2.5% for our teachers, and then on top of that, a 2% COLA. So it's 4.5% to 5% increase in salaries that would be effective July 1 that we negotiated 2 years ago. This is the 3rd year of the negotiated agreement. We did back out due to change in attrition about $115,000. So that gets us to $5.3 million. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I probably would have had some issue with it based on the forecasting and the spreadsheets. I don't see how there should be any contention around approving that.
Wow. That's,
I can support 5.3 million. That's it.
Now, I will tell you that I am in full support of the transportation expenses.
But look, they're under their own audit for last year. They underspent what they budgeted for transportation, $4,949,000. They underspent their revenues by $34.3 million. They had a fund balance of $22 million.
so to be fair, those revenues are the same that you just spoke about. They're the American Recovery Act, where they push all that money into 1 year and you spend it out over multiple. So that's where we get the $30+ million, is the multiple years of ARPA funds. The one ARPA fund, the last one was 20, how much?
$22 million.
About $22 million, on top of the 10 before that, on top of that. And as for transportation, yes, we did not spend the money that we had budgeted because we did not have schools open and buses running until halfway through the 3rd quarter and then finishing. And so we took that same money and we rolled it into the budget. So the first ECC is for non-recurring things. If you weren't going to entertain that, we could entertain that. That's certainly what we've been doing for the last 2 years. We can go forward with that. The second is to honor the negotiated agreement, and the third is specifically for our bus drivers. And we took out all of the fuel and expenses. $1.7 million that's before you in the ECC is the money required to go to the drivers and pay them, instead of 5.5 hours minimum each day, 6 hours, and instead of a $20 an hour flat rate, they go up to $25 plus another 26.5% fringe, and the attendants go, I believe, from $15 to $17.5 per hour plus fringe, and that in itself costs $1.7 million. But that has to be found because we've got fantastic drivers and fantastic attendants and fantastic contractors. And while all other counties had moments where buses did not roll and kids did not get picked up, in St. Mary's County, our bus drivers came out every single day. And they also very respectfully engaged in the conversation back and forth to get here.
And I would say you could find that 1.7 in your revenue, sir. Last year, we were told that if we didn't fund this, you had to close a school, or you had to lay off 49 teachers, or you had to cancel STEM or band or some other dear program to everybody. And then, look, I got a copy of a letter my daughter gave me from my granddaughter brought home from the school, from you, telling this to the people. Now you turn around, you go through the year, and you got a $22 million fund balance. that makes it hard for this commissioner to sit here and say, you can't find 1.7 million. I can do 5.3. I'm only one of five.
Right.
But sir, I do not agree that you can't find 1.7.
Well, and I would respectfully say, go back to that fund balance, and it's not $22 million. A large portion of that fund balance includes the actual money that we pushed at the end of last year into this year's budget. We carry forward about a $12 million.
There was $7 million that was used in this year's budget to balance this year's budget for non-recurring costs. And then back in October, November of this year, we also came before you and requested to use the remaining unassigned fund balance to support OPEB as well as the turf fields.
So we put
Dr.
$2 million to
Smith.
OPEB, 2.5 to the fields, and $7 million back into the budget.
So Dr. Smith, the good news right now is you've got Commissioner Hewitt, you've got Commissioner O'Connor, who've said they support the 5.3 for the negotiated agreement. I support it also. That's 3 commissioners, so any teachers listening can know that the negotiated agreement is supported. I also support the bus drivers too, because we saw throughout our state and across the country that bus drivers are critical. We trust.
We all do.
We do.
I don't think, and to be clear, because, you know, we've had these conversations, and I don't disagree with Commissioner Colvin. I don't think it's a lack of support for the individual person. I think
Right,
we're looking at the
right.
numbers,
Right.
to be fair, and they do an amazing job. Now, we're looking at Charles County, Calvert County, Prince George's County, and all the other ones that have upped their rates, and we've seen what happened, and now, mind you, there's a difference up the road because there's a union, et cetera. This is recurring costs. I do believe that this isn't paid out of fund balance from the school system. I do believe this is part of the contractual agreement of transportation. I do believe it also affects non-public school bus drivers, correct? Okay, so we're talking about a total impact, and those that have come to the table, I have to say, absolutely, respectfully, admirably, to negotiate this versus, and believe me, I do know that there was conversations of, we're not showing up on Friday, we're not showing up on Monday, we're going to shut down the school. It's the way it goes. And I do believe some of the money that you came back out of your fund balance or designation was to award the $2,500 bonuses or something like
Yes,
that.
so we did go back and we took a look at our second ESSER funds and reconsidered so that the bus drivers receive $2,500. They received it in December, they'll receive it in June, and they'll receive it in December and June again.
Yeah.
And we included that in the package also, just to show that.
So we're going to get a $5,000 bonus next year on top of what you're proposing for the hourly rate and everything else.
It's this year, right?
Yes, they will. So we allocated over 2 years.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
$10,000 to go to each one of the drivers.
Right.
And in doing that, that equates to about a $5 an hour raise this year and next year.
Which would equate to the adjustment that you're already asking for. Essentially.
In this year it's already done. They're making the money that they're making. So next year they will make the money that we've negotiated plus another $5 on top of that. That still is less than they would be making in Calvert, Charles, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Howard. I don't know about Baltimore City proper, but
Nobody does.
and Commissioner Hewitt, I appreciate from the very beginning, we're starting with truly great news, and I think that takes everybody from here and puts them here. I do deeply appreciate it. If you can come a little closer, you can give us a number. We go back and we work. The bus drivers, the biggest thing that we want to be as upfront and transparent as we can possibly be. We want to make sure that we're making sound decisions. We want to make sure that we're spending money the right way.
Well, I think, Dr. Smith, you have concurrence on the negotiated agreement. That's obvious. You have the 3. I think you have 2 of us right now. I don't think there's been any other comment. Well, 2 and 1, I guess you could say, in reference to supporting the increase there. But I don't think there's been any further input. So
I want to bring one thing up, and I'm going to be 12 for 12 on this one. We've agreed to give the teachers 4.5%, 5%, something like that.
So the teachers have whatever the negotiated step within.
There's 2.5 and 2.
And a 2%.
So that's 4.5, and you said something about 5% out
Yeah,
there, too.
what is it? Is it 4.5 or 5?
So there are multiple pay scales. There's a teacher pay scale, there's an administrator pay scale, and there's a non-certificated employee pay scale for secretaries and maintenance workers and building service workers and all of that. Their scale is actually 3% between each step. So every single year they get a 3% raise if the negotiated step goes through. For our teachers, each step is 2.5%.
So what is the average or the blended?
So it's between 4.5 is the least, 5 is the highest.
Okay,
Well, I'm just going to say, only thing I'm going to say is this. And whatever we're going to give to the Board of Education as far as a pay raise is concerned
Yeah.
is going to be the same thing I'm going to propose to go to the sheriff and the county employees. Because
Absolutely.
everyone's getting treated equally. I'm not going to start.
That's
waving-
right.
I've said this 12 times, and I'm going to say it
Look,
last time. That's it.
I-
Everybody gets the same.
Because look, every year, you guys negotiate a negotiated agreement, and I support you doing that because you have fixed costs. You know what it costs you to run, whether it's 3 years, 4 years.
4 years, we have 4-year agreements.
I remember the days when we used to do it year after year.
Year to year.
My point to you is this.
Yes.
People do not like it when you have a 5% and they get a 2.5%, because it's kind of like the military.
Right.
The Marines, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy. Hey, look, we need them all. So whatever you guys negotiate, and when I see us having a little bit extra money,
Right.
I say we need to take care of the county and the sheriff's office too.
So it sounds easy. Then you got 3. So Ms. Cudmore can just work the numbers across the board and put it all into the
I can
budget.
say
and-
right now, for a 2% COLA and a 2.5% equivalent merit, it's about $2.2 million for the county employees and sheriff.
Well,
Okay. There's more than enough money in the budget.
I'm fine with the merit on the county employees. I'm okay with the Moshe agreement. I'm thinking about the bus driver thing still.
Well, bus drivers for me is
Well,
pretty
let's leave
straightforward.
that into the part at the end when we can, look, they got to wingle us out a little bit more. I'm still not comfortable with these numbers I saw on this audit. I mean, almost 9 million less than what they expected for salaries.
I'm not
Well,
disagreeing
you
with
know,
you.
I do.
Like your kids aren't there.
Now let's look at this objectively. I have 2 commissioners that just said what we do for the teachers, we're going to do for the county employees, we're going to do for the sheriff's department, and then say, well,
Got 3 of them
what about
saying
the
that.
bus drivers?
Same way.
Right. So I mean, the drivers of the vehicles are the same as the rest of the employees.
So they're employees, Commissioner O'Connor. My
Yeah,
point.
but we fund them.
They're not our employees.
But they're contracted. So I mean,
But again, they're their responsibility.
Right.
Look, we have
So you're good on the bus
different
drivers, Steve?
constituencies. The Board of Education is elected. They have their constituencies, and those are the people that the bus drivers should be going to saying, get more money.
I think they did.
Obviously, we
Yeah, he's sitting right here.
No, I agree, but he
Wait, were
always
you good
comes.
on the bus
Unfortunately, I only have
If
one
they don't
place
get
to
it,
get more
we're the
money.
bad
But
guys.
somehow, if he can't find out his own,
But I,
It's always us.
he's support budget.
Get all the extra money.
I mean, I think Commissioner President Guy, well,
Well,
going back
we
and
need
forth.
to support him, but I want you to look at your budget first, and we'll.
If you
Let's-
could
let's
meet
look at-
halfway on the on the ECC, the second one, do half of that, we'll go back and we'll scrub all of ours, we'll take care of that.
Negotiating here.
Well,
Why don't we do it when we do the reconciliation in May?
Yeah, we need to look at all of our other employees here. We got a bunch of people in the book script, a lot of FTEs
Yeah,
giving a hire.
EMS would-
And then you already mentioned 2.5 million for the sheriff and our employees. So we need
I
to.
have to point out, I'm sorry, I did
No,
not
no,
mean
go
to
ahead, no,
interrupt.
go ahead.
I really didn't. I have to point out the inequity in this conversation. Literally. Those are contractual employees, employees of the school system, however you want to look at it. You're saying take care of the county. Everybody is equal, but everybody is not being treated as equal. So it's saying the negotiated agreement is there in order to satisfy the contractors. They're going to need the 1.7 million. Now, if Dr. Smith is willing to go back and scrub the numbers, then I applaud that. Thank you. I don't know that it's necessary at this time based on the entirety of our budget. I do think it's prudent, but I just think that if you're going to talk equality, equality is equality.
the last thing I want to do is have people be upset and have this go forward. I don't want for one second the bus drivers to think that they're and the attendance, that the
So
bus
if we
drivers
were
are
to say $800,000,
then we go back and we make sure that that works.
and then we can all walk away from here with our budget that much closer and.
You don't have to, you don't have to see me again.
And we got to give our bus drivers,
Isn't that worth it?
everybody gets that.
I mean, I have,
Be there.
like, if you're willing to meet in the
Still,
middle
I
on
think
it, I'm
you've
fine
got
with
that
that.
money. You can dig it up out of your accounts that you have overfunded. You can come up with that 1.7. You can come up with it. If they're that important to you, you can make it work.
Well, I think the bus drivers are important to all of us. I just
They
imagine
are,
we're
but they-
discussing where the money's coming from. They're all important.
Over here crying they can't afford it,
Well-
and they can afford it.
Well,
Commissioner Hewitt's right on that one.
I mean, I appreciate the commitment to fully fund the negotiated agreement for over 2,000 employees. I deeply and truly appreciate that. I do.
I struggle with the concept of inequity in this conversation.
Well, we want to make sure that the bus drivers do get what they need.
Yeah. I mean,
I would say if you can go back and scrub it, and if you can find it, fine. If not, you have to come back to us. That's what I
I'd
say.
like to
I know.
earmark Commissioner Colvin's point of saying $800,000 and have them come back and work the rest out from there.
Talking about a $300 million budget here, and if we can bend $800,000 more on our side, then everybody's happy.
Right.
Now, of course, in good faith, Dr. Smith, if you're going to go back and scrub the numbers, and there is any possible way within that you can come lower, I would.
Well, the largest challenge we have is that all this falls under transportation.
Right.
And transportation, we're plowing well over $1 million just to cover fuel costs.
I'm sure.
Before we do anything else. And
You see how much fuel went up today?
Right, and I think before we get done, that, because it's a categorical budget, because I can't move money from here to there when need be, categorically, this is what we targeted for transportation, and we forecast out how much it was going to cost to pay everybody for an extra half an hour and to raise all the rates to the top of the mark for those two categories.
I think I want to be clear on it. I support the 1.7, but I'm not going to die on my principles in that sense. So if there's another offer that's there, that's available, that's willing to work through this, I'm willing to get there to see where the end result is. So
Well, the thing we have, excuse me, one thing we haven't got to yet, this is round one of the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from the sheriff, we haven't heard from emergency service, we haven't seen all the, 70 new or 80 new positions are being asked for in this budget?
49, didn't I see that?
Right, and I do
a huge
appreciate the
number.
fact that you did going back to realize that we haven't asked for a new position since 2019, 2020, and even the new positions that are in there were restricted, that are already hired, that will be moved into the general, but will sunset.
You
when
haven't had the growth in student population.
I would agree. We have not grown, and yet our responsibilities are exponentially higher than they've ever been.
And your MOE goes up more every year.
And your enrollment goes down every year.
But
A disconnect
I would
for
also
me.
take one step back and say that inflation is over 7%.
We
Right.
understand.
Whoa. 7% this year, but you've had 4.5% or 5% pay raise the last 4 years. Inflation was zero.
We had a 1.75 COLA last year. We had
Plus
a
two,
1%,
plus two.
1%
Everything's plus
COLA,
two, remember.
Which was matched, which was matched. And we haven't had the benefit of going out and saying, we're going to do a comparative study to see how much teachers make in this county, and this county, and this county. We are one of the lowest paid counties, certainly in the Tri-County area. And the reason why people stay with us is because they love St. Mary's, they love the parents, they love the kids, they love the community.
And you have one of the highest graduation rates in the state and one of the highest teacher retention rates in the state. So something just doesn't mix up all the time.
Well, here's what I'd say. I would be flexible with you, is if you didn't throw us under the bus with closing a school, laying off 49 teachers, or canceling band. I mean, look, we are not that bad. And I think you have more in your reserves, in your money's going on here, especially from last year's audit, that you have more questions to answer than we have.
We had a perfect audit.
I do think, I don't think
It's
the,
always good when you're 22 million over what you thought.
Well, then we took our $22 million and rolled it into the operating budget this year. We did exactly what we were supposed to do. Any dollar we receive, we turn right around and put back into the school system. And every single dollar that we receive goes as close as possible to the kids in the classroom. It truly does. It truly does. We're not carrying around a fund balance. You say a $22 million fund balance, but we showed you, we put 7 in the operating, 2.5 in the fields, and $2 million in the OPEB. So the rest of it
But your
is a
OPEB only went up by 78 million. You're 497 in the hole. You're buried so deep you'll never get out.
Right, so how would we have more money to put into OPEB?
Well, my point is, you're not taking into account the things that cause those things to go up. You're ignoring it. When you get that money that comes back to you in that 5 million or whatever million with those health rebates, you ought to be putting that into OPEB, buddy. You're
We turn it
ignoring
around, we
that.
put it into the operation of the school system, or we put it back into the employees' hands. I mean, that is what we have done historically for the last several years. We really,
Well, find a kinder, gentler way of
I feel like
presenting
last year
it.
we had a much bigger gap. This year, we're so close, so early. We're so close.
well, and the thing about it is that there's, we said it last budget cycle that there was the revenues were underestimated, that the conversations that were happening were basically unnecessary, and then we ended up with the fund balance.
You're right.
So this year, what I'm trying to avoid is repeating exactly what is happening right now, because we have the funding, an ample amount of funding, with lowering taxes by estimating the revenue appropriately. So we're arguing over $1.7 million that has been clearly laid out. I mean, I've gone through the entire school system budget, reading it through, and based on the line items and how they lay out in the transportation fund, it's category based. I've spoken with the drivers. I've followed everything else. I just don't think it's necessary to reach this level at this point.
But we were
And-
at last year, we did 2.5%.
Yeah.
And we left it at that.
But
They went through the roof. And there all that stuff about,
But it was just,
look, this year we're funding the negotiated
yeah. I'm
consensus on that.
My point is, it was just unnecessary, and that's what I'm trying to avoid is this direction that we're going in right now. So earmarking the funding and saying, okay, like I said, I'm 800,000, I'm with it. Just because I'm not going to die on my principles on this one, but we can reapproach this later if necessary. But I just don't think.
Okay, let's get moving on here. How about if we,
You got 2 who say no, 2 who say 800.
we're going to go 5, 3, right?
Yeah, the
Do
negotiated
that.
agreement.
Let's negotiate agreement, take care of that, okay?
Yes, from
Now,
that
let's
one.
look at the next page, page 35. I like the 800,
800?
Okay.
and he can go ahead and work it out from there.
3-2, you get your 800. So we don't have to ever see you no more, right? You're gone.
Well, you will have me come back at your budget hearing and say thank you very much. You will, as you.
Give that one up.
We're not going to have parents outside protesting.
You're going to have parents outside throwing you.
Teachers and all that stuff, right? Yeah, none of that?
They'll be throwing you
Okay,
out, too.
good. I'm glad to hear that.
And if you went to Leonardtown, as opposed to, I know you're scheduled for Chopticon, but Leonardtown did get new seats.
They did?
Yeah, they have brand new seats.
But while
Chopticon's closer to my house.
while
okay?
we're here, I do want to say,
That's kind
Mine too.
of close to mine, too.
well, I do want to acknowledge, well, we're going to, who knows how this thing will end up over the next 3 or 4 weeks as far as the budget's concerned and what this 800 may come or not come to. But I do want to thank you for a couple things. I want to thank you for this past year working with us and we working with you to get 3 new turf fields and track and field complexes at all the high schools so our kids can now compete evenly
Yes.
with their other
No
peer
doubt.
schools.
No doubt.
And there's a lot of people out there who say, why do we have to have turf fields, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, we have done so well in improving our recs and parks and our school system so our kids can compete along the way. They're one-time costs, that's not recurring costs, et cetera, so that's been a good thing. Secondly, I want to thank you for working with the Recs and Parks programs and the summer programs. So we're able to open up the gyms in some of these schools. So we have rooms and places for these kids to have things to do during the summer. So we're not always complaining, there's no place to go, there's nothing to do. Thank you, Mr. Smith, Dr. Smith, for that. So there's been good things coming out of this, and I just want to acknowledge the cooperation we've had between us on things that are, not budget-oriented, but oriented towards the kids, making things positive youth experiences and things like that along the way. So for me, thank you.
And additionally, the technology, there's a lot of good. It's all good. There's a lot of good cooperation.
Well, and you have just funded us, tentatively, substantially over maintenance of effort, as you have continued to do so every single year. And
Yes.
hopefully without any animus or drama or what have you. And we're all smiling at each
I
other.
think whatever animus is there is now passed and been spoken, and we've moved on.
Right. We can all be friends.
So let me just
Doctor.
refresh.
Yes.
$800,000 we're funding on page 35 for transportation. We are funding the entire 5.298437 for negotiated agreements on page 34. And you've agreed to a 2% COLA and a 2.5% merit equivalent for county employees?
And the sheriff's department.
That includes the sheriff's
Sheriff,
office.
yeah, sheriff's corrections.
Approximately $2.2 million.
Yes.
That's why
And I would say that's the minimum for the sheriff. We'll give him probably
We'll
what he
come back
needs.
next week,
And
right.
let him prioritize it where he wants. If he wants to meet Charles County, suit himself.
Thank you. And what I will say now, to the public, I understand is there's this Kerwin Commission, Blueprint for Maryland's Future, that's been out since 2018, I think it was. We are one of the handful of counties.
Oh, yeah, there's 6 of them, right.
The last 7.5 years, we have made sure we've met the maintenance of effort plus, and it has brought us right in line. We are just about at zero compared to some counties that are indebted $60, $70 million behind in their educational efforts.
And now we're going to continue to be on that list.
Exactly. And we believe firmly in education. That's just the way it is in life.
Well,
Yes.
well, not on the agenda today when we're talking about the sheriff's department. I do believe that I just want to make sure this number looks right, so I'm actually forecasting. They're showing a decrease.
No.
No, that's next week, the sheriff's next week.
Okay, are we
Okay, all right.
are we done with Mr. Smith? Dr. Smith, excuse me.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's done. I'll see you all.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Yes, and a lot of that, when you're saying a negative, it's actually because we're removing the non-recurring items. Remember,
Right, right.
we're removing the FY 2018 lease.
Yeah.
That money is no longer in here, because we paid off the lease.
Okay, so that's why I'm seeing
And
that.
then also last year, you used fund balance for all their vehicles. We paid for the vehicles outright. So that's part of our non-recurring that we adjust in the baseline.
I was a little
That's why-
shocked when I saw that
I
it was
know,
going
me
to, yeah,
too.
okay.
Well, the
I looked at it
vehicles
and I-
were 1.7 million.
Get back to the next, what's
Right.
next?
So I
Next
think
on
you
agenda.
guys have answered all of my questions.
Okay.
And it's almost 5 after 3, so would you like to go over anything else today?
Nope, we're good.
Got a lot of direction, I really appreciate it.
More than you even asked for.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited. Because it's nicer the earlier we get the direction, the
Okay, for
better.
those listening, we have a public hearing tonight
Oh, yeah.
at 6:30.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
The session's over.